In the last episode, we witnessed a captivating conversation between Carlisle and Ashya about the dire state of Pervaz. However, in the midst of their discussion, exhaustion overtakes Ashya, and she drifts off to sleep. Meanwhile, back in the Empire, Empress Beatrice reassures Matthias, urging him not to worry about the impending war in Carlin's place. With steely resolve, she confides that she has meticulously planned every detail to secure his path to becoming the new emperor. A few days later, in the war-torn lands of Pervaz, Carlisle surveys the devastation and grimly remarks that it's far worse than he had imagined. Ashya solemnly responds, explaining that this is the harsh reality after a prolonged war. Carlisle, with growing concern, points out that it's not just the roads, the Empire has neglected Pervaz for far too long, and he fears that nothing will go according to plan. In this desolate wasteland, finding people will be a challenge, and the daunting task of rebuilding everything looms ahead. He then sharply questions how much Ashya intended to extract from his father. Ashya calmly replies that she only planned to secure some emergency rations, food, and medicine, estimating the reconstruction cost at a staggering 500,000 Verona. Carlisle, with a cynical grin, mocks the amount, asking what they could possibly achieve with such a meager sum. Survive for just 1 or 2 more years, only to leave this world with no regrets. Ashya is taken aback by Carlin's extreme stance and silently wonders how he would react if she revealed the true costs, even if the emperor refused to pay. With a sense of pride, Carlisle declares that Ashya played her cards well and was fortunate to have him by her side. Ashya can only sigh in response, choosing to stay silent. Yet, deep down, she knows Carlisle isn't entirely wrong. 500,000 Verona might barely get them through the winter. After arriving in Pervaz, Ashya informs Carlisle that she needs to attend to some pressing matters and warns him that the castle is in less than ideal condition, so he might find it uncomfortable. Carlisle steps out of the carriage with a hint of nonchalance, remarking that he's heard such warnings countless times before. Ashya observes him closely, thinking that perhaps Carlisle won't be too concerned about comfort, given his extensive experience in war-torn regions. As they approach the entrance of the castle, Decker warmly welcomes Ashya and Carlisle. The moment they step inside, whispers begin to circulate among the servants, speculating on how Carlisle will manage to live in such a dilapidated place after all his efforts. Ashya steals a glance at Carlisle, wondering if he might finally be regretting his decision to come here. But to her surprise, Carlisle casually asks where she plans for him to stay. Without missing a beat, Ashya quickly responds that she will give him the entire second floor for his highness, his aides, and any guests he may have. Carlisle, slightly amused, questions if she's really giving it all away since the second floor is typically reserved for the lord of the manor. Ashya, with a calm demeanor, assures him that she will make do with the first floor. Carlisle thanks her with a smile, showing no sign of discomfort. He then orders Bailey to move all the luggage to the second floor, solidifying his unbothered attitude toward his new surroundings. A while later, Decker casually drapes his arm over Ashya's shoulder, a familiar gesture, and suggests that she check out her new room on the first floor, mentioning that the maids put in some extra effort just for her. The rest of Ashya's group joins in, and as she and Decker enjoy their time together, Carlisle can't help but grow curious about Decker's relationship with Ashya. When Ashya finally sees her room, she bursts into laughter, asking, "What on earth is all this?" A man named Busty hesitantly asks if it isn't to her liking. Ashya playfully questions him, "Is this all you're doing? And can you explain what exactly this is?" In a slightly subdued tone, Busty explains that he heard the capital's nobles sleep in beds like this, so he tried to create something similar. Ashya smiles, genuinely impressed, and praises Busty for doing such a great job at replicating something he's barely seen. She thanks him, adding that she'll get to experience a luxurious bed she never even had at home. With a hopeful expression, Busty asks if it's to her liking then. Ashya touches the flowers adorning the room and reassures him, "Of course, I like it, even though I'm not used to all this grandeur." But in Pervaz, flowers symbolize the end of war. She then turns to a maid named Della, expressing her gratitude for her hard work in arranging the flowers. Decker chimes in, mentioning that Mrs. Ramir also put in a lot of effort, especially since the butler position has been vacant for a while. Ashya nods in understanding and adds that it seems Della has been taking on the butler's responsibilities as well. She assures them that she will find a butler as soon as possible, appreciating all the dedication from her team. Della finally speaks up, informing Ashya that a dedicated maid will be assigned to her, as there will be more eyes watching her from now on. Curious, Ashya asks if Della has someone in mind. Della confidently replies that they've already chosen the perfect person. With that, she calls in a maid named Nina. Nina steps forward and introduces herself as Nina Cologne. Della then elaborates on Nina's responsibilities. She'll handle organizing, cleaning Ashia's room, preparing meals, washing, and all other miscellaneous tasks. She'll even assist with more personal matters like bathing and brushing Ashia's hair. Ashya expresses her appreciation, saying she looks forward to being in Nina's care. Afterward, Ashya addresses everyone, telling them to get some rest as she has something to discuss with Decker and Della privately. As the others leave, Ashya turns to Decker and Della, commenting that tomorrow will be hectic with the provisions being supplied to Pervaz. She warns that there might be some friction between Carlin's people and theirs but makes it clear that she has no intention of asking their people to tolerate any unfair treatment. She emphasizes that the deal she made was mutually beneficial and there were no slave contracts involved. The next day, Carlane mentions to Bailey that he gave the people who left for Pervaz enough supplies to last a month. He's surprised that they didn't steal a single penny. Bailey responds with a knowing smile, commenting that those who endure hardships together tend to form strong bonds, though it's still surprising given that they looked like bandits. Carlane, however, seems unsettled and begins to wonder about Decker, particularly why he addressed Ashya so informally. With a furrowed brow, Carlane orders Bailey to conduct a thorough investigation of Pervaz's key personnel. Despite their current alliance, Carlane knows there's nothing stopping Pervaz from betraying them. He emphasizes the need to especially investigate the big guy who constantly lingers around Ashya like an aide. Bailey immediately understands that Carlane is referring to Decker Donovan and explains that he's already gathered some information. Bailey reveals that Decker is the eldest son of the Donovan family, a vassal family under Emir Pervaz. He adds that, in the past, Decker was even considered a potential marriage candidate for Count Ashya Pervaz. Carlane grins at this, his thoughts lingering on the idea of Ashya being content with Decker's ridiculously large stature, a faint hint of amusement playing on his lips. At the same time, Grand Priest Gabriel was deep in prayer within the quiet solitude of the chapel. Suddenly, he became aware of someone approaching. He lifted his gaze and, with a gentle voice, asked, "Has the noble presence been well?" It was Empress Beatrice who entered the chapel, her steps echoing softly in the sacred space. She approached Gabriel and, with an air of purpose, asked if he would mind sparing some of his time, as she wished to discuss the future of the empire. With a warm, cherished smile, Gabriel responded, "It would be an honor, Your Majesty. I am happy to be of service to you." 1 week later, the supplies from the capital were finally released, and Pervaz's situation began to drastically improve. Ashya took a leisurely stroll through the city, checking to ensure that everyone was being well cared for. As she walked, she unexpectedly came across Decker, who was busy distributing grains to the townspeople. With a curious look, Ashya asked if the distribution was going smoothly. Decker, his face lit up with evident happiness, informed her that with the amount of grain they had, everything was going great, and everyone was satisfied with their portions. Ashya smiled and commended Decker, thanking him for setting such clear and effective standards. Decker, in turn, reminded her that she had spent an all-nighter with him working on those very standards, so she should give herself some credit too. As they continued talking, Ashya noticed that Decker was distributing flour, salt, and yeast. She guessed it was for baking bread and commented that the smell of freshly baked bread would fill the entire territory tonight. She then asked if there was anything that might be lacking in the distribution process. Decker assured her that they had planned with plenty of leeway, so there were no issues. He also mentioned that tomorrow they'd be receiving the seed distribution application forms, and that everyone was probably busy devising their sowing plans after such a long time. Ashya felt a surge of determination, resolving that she would restore Pervaz, no matter what. Suddenly, a man with a bowl haircut came running toward her, urgently calling her to the barricade workshop to inspect the newly arrived lumber. Ashya exchanged a glance with Decker, gave him a nod, and finally took her leave to attend to the next task. As Ashya walks into the barricade workshop, she is immediately taken aback by the sheer amount of lumber stacked around, far more than she had anticipated. Noticing her surprise, the man with the bowl haircut explains that Carlane had purchased all the spare lumber from the northern villagers. He also mentions that the wood has been treated with flame-resistant chemicals to ensure it wouldn't catch fire easily. Ashya is shocked, wondering when Carlane had the time to arrange all of this, especially since he had only just arrived in Pervaz. She begins to realize just how capable and resourceful Carlane is, deciding that she should follow his lead since he's the one making her dreams a reality with such actions. Just then, a servant arrives to inform Ashya that Carlane is looking for her. Without delay, she makes her way to his office. As soon as she enters, Carlane greets her with a straightforward question, asking if everything is going well. Ashya, still somewhat in awe of his earlier generosity, responds that thanks to his contributions, things are going much better than she had expected. Carlisle then points out that while he has provided a substantial amount of money and supplies, he hasn't received any updates on how they're being utilized, which is why he called her. Ashya suddenly feels flustered, realizing she should have kept him informed. She quickly apologizes, admitting that she didn't think he would be interested in the specifics of Pervaz's reconstruction. However, as she reflects, she realizes that if Carlisle weren't interested, he wouldn't have invested so much in the first place. With newfound enthusiasm, Ashya eagerly tells Carlisle that she will immediately gather the reconstruction plans and budget distribution details for him. Without waiting for his response, she hurries out of the office, determined to provide him with all the information he needs, leaving Carlisle with an amused but curious expression. After Ashya left, Bailey commented, "Ashya isn't someone who would embezzle the money." Still, Carlisle remained skeptical and replied, "Even though Ashya could have embezzled as much money as she wanted if she put her mind to it, the fact that she isn't is hard to believe." Carlisle suspected that Ashya must have prepared something beforehand, like a fake ledger, and he was sure there would be loose ends somewhere. A while later, Ashya returned to Carlisle's office with all the plans and books related to the construction. She carefully explained and showed him all the expenses she had made and those she planned to make. Carlisle meticulously tallied everything and, to his surprise, found that Ashya really hadn't embezzled a single coin. Every plan was perfectly organized, and the records were thorough. After going through everything, Carlisle finally announced, "The plans are perfect." Hearing this, Ashya's face lit up with joy, and she thanked him sincerely. However, Carlisle still had one lingering question. "There's nothing you put in your name?" he asked. Ashya looked puzzled, not understanding what he meant. Seeing her confusion, Carlisle's voice grew louder as he clarified, "Didn't you set aside any money for your treasury?" Ashya, still perplexed, asked, "How does filling my treasury help with rebuilding the territory?" She seemed genuinely confused by his line of questioning. Setting that aside, Carlisle suddenly shifted topics and asked, "Have you already made any plans for the necklace and wedding ring I gave you?" Ashya calmly explained that she had already decided to sell them at an auction and use the money to train a cavalry unit. She added that she had heard there were many skilled cavalrymen in his knight order, so she hoped to get some advice from him on that as well. Carlisle, however, didn't respond to her plan. Instead, he tersely ordered, "You may leave now. I've confirmed everything I wanted to." With that, Ashya respectfully took her leave from Carlisle's office, still wondering about his reactions and concerns. After Ashya left Carlisle's office, Carlisle couldn't help but exclaim, "To think Ashya has already made plans for the money from selling the wedding gift, it's just insane." Bailey, sensing Carlisle's surprise, asked, "Are you disappointed to hear that?" Carlisle immediately shook his head. "No, of course not. It's just absurd to me. I was thinking that a necklace valued so highly in society isn't all that useful here." He paused, reflecting on the necklace. The thought crossed his mind, was there some kind of curse on that necklace that kept it from staying with its owner for long? But then, a different realization dawned on him. It was probably for the best. He had grown weary of the pitiful gazes that always accompanied any mention of the necklace, especially since it was a memento of his mother. The weight of that sentiment had always been heavy, and now, the idea of the necklace disappearing in such a simple, almost meaningless way felt like a relief. At the same time, in the grand corridor of the temple, Empress Beatrice, her tone weighted with urgency, reminded High Priest Gabriel of a chilling prophecy he once uttered. "You said that if Carlisle became king, a dark future would await our empire, didn't you? After all, Carlisle has a history of killing countless people from a young age." Gabriel, with a somber expression, replied, "Indeed. Yet, the lives of our citizens are straying further and further from the teachings of God. And now, we have someone, born with God's blessing, leading us away from his words." Beatrice's eyes shone with a flicker of hope. "Those were my very concerns about Carlisle," she admitted. She then earnestly requested Gabriel to step forward and lend his support to Matthias and her cause. Gabriel considered her request thoughtfully before speaking. "Of course, I wish to help you. However, for me to do so, there is one promise you must make." Beatrice leaned in, her expression one of eager determination. "What is it? Tell me, and I will do it." Gabriel's voice was calm but resolute as he said, "If Prince Matthias ascends to the throne, you must ensure that the Chattian Empire becomes a holy empire." Beatrice's eyes widened in surprise upon hearing the term, Holy Empire. Sensing her confusion, Gabriel elaborated, "A holy empire means that the Chattian Empire must be governed according to the laws of Ilahi. This is the only way for us to distinguish ourselves from the surrounding barbarian nations." Beatrice, her mind racing with the implications, responded thoughtfully, "I also believe in the importance of following God's words to establish a holy empire. However, I need more time to contemplate this." With that, Beatrice took her leave from Gabriel, her footsteps echoing in the corridor. As she walked away, Gabriel's expression gradually shifted from solemnity to annoyance. On a scorching summer day in Pervaz, Carlisle and Bailey were immersed in a fierce duel beneath the blazing sunlight. Carlisle's movements were precise and commanding, and he triumphed swiftly, showcasing his skill. He took a moment to commend Bailey for his impressive growth in swordsmanship over such a short period. Despite the intensity of summer in the far north, where the heat seemed almost unrelenting, Carlisle removed his shirt and drenched himself with cold water. The icy splash provided a brief but welcome relief from the oppressive heat. As they both cooled off, Bailey reported to Carlisle that Asha Pervaz was aggressively working to rejuvenate the estate's agriculture. Her efforts were moving at a rapid pace, and Bailey noted that plowing the fields twice should suffice for now. Carlisle, nodding thoughtfully, remarked on Ashia's evident excitement when planting the seeds. With a hint of surprise, Bailey asked, "You can actually tell the difference in Ashia's expressions?" A vivid image of Asha appeared in Carlisle's mind, and with a knowing smile, he replied, "Only if I look closely." He then turned his attention to a different matter, asking Bailey if all the luggage from the capital had been sorted. Bailey replied that it was nearly completed but expressed concern over the strained attitude of their servants towards those of the Pervaz castle. He worried it might cause friction with Asha. Carlisle, with a decisive tone, stated, "I've already instructed our servants to confine themselves to their designated areas to avoid any issues. Don't dwell on the servants. Instead, focus on managing the nobles in the capital. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind." Bailey nodded in agreement, ready to shift his focus as advised. In the castle, Nina, Ashia's maid, crossed paths with Carlisle's maid. The encounter was anything but cordial as Carlisle's maid abruptly halted Nina, demanding, "Are you asking because you don't know, or are you mocking me?" The authority in her tone was unmistakable. Nina, taken aback, responded calmly, "I was simply going on my way." Carlisle's maid, however, didn't relent. With a sneer, she mocked, "Do you have no respect for your seniors in Pervaz? Do you think all maids are the same?" She then pointedly remarked, "You're a maid of Lord Pervaz, and I'm the prince's maid. Who do you think holds the higher status here? Do you need me to explain why crossing paths like that is considered rude?" Nina, feeling the sting of the reprimand, bowed deeply and apologized without further argument. Yet, Carlisle's maid was unyielding, and as she turned to leave, she commented scornfully, "That's typical of someone named Yangju. Even her servants are as rude as she is." Unable to contain her anger, Nina shot back, "You can insult me as much as you like, but how dare you insult our lord?" Tears began to stream down her face as she spoke. The chief maid, noticing Nina's distress, approached and asked gently, "What's the matter? Why are you crying?" Through her tears, Nina explained how Carlisle's maid had insulted their lord, Asha. The chief maid, with a calming presence, advised, "This is why we must strive to do better from now on. How we treat and care for our lord reflects on us. If we fall short in any way, we must bow our heads and learn, for we are expected to be the best in everything." Nina, wiping away her tears, nodded gratefully. She apologized for showing an unreliable side and quickly departed, her mind focused on the chief maid's wise counsel. After a while, Mrs. Ramir, the chief maid, approached Decker with a grave report. She informed him that Carlisle's maid had insulted Asha in front of Nina, and this was not an isolated incident. Ramir revealed that she had received several complaints since the first day, and she feared that leaving the situation unresolved could escalate into something more serious. Decker's face hardened as he listened, his anger barely contained. He clenched his fists, determined to address the issue. "I'll speak with Asha about this immediately," he assured Ramir, his voice firm. Later that day, Asha stormed into Carlisle's office, her frustration palpable. Carlisle, noticing her distressed demeanor, inquired, "Why are you so upset?" Asha, with a tone laced with urgency, requested Carlisle to manage his subordinates better. She explained that his servants had been repeatedly clashing with hers, and she hoped he could intervene to prevent further complications. Carlisle, with a wry grin, commented, "I don't think my servants would have said anything out of line." Ashia's eyes flashed with intensity as she reminded Carlisle of their contract. "Do you remember the agreement we made?" she asked pointedly. Carlisle replied with an air of confidence, "Of course, I remember. I'm faithfully adhering to our contract." Asha then requested Bailey to present the contract. Bailey promptly produced the document and placed it on the table. Asha pointed to the specific clause where Carlisle had pledged to respect all individuals within the Pervaz territory. She asserted, "While I can overlook personal insults directed at me, I will not tolerate disrespect towards the people of Pervaz." Carlisle's smile turned into a smirk as he challenged, "What if I choose to ignore your warning?" Ashia's gaze grew fierce as she responded, "If you seek my cooperation, you'd better tread carefully. There's no remedy for the bite of a wild dog." With a decisive grin, Carlisle ordered Bailey to summon the servants he had brought with him, signaling that the matter would be addressed promptly.